across America. Live, this is Point of View. And now, Dr. Merrill Matthews.
And welcome to Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews, sitting in for Kirby Anderson today, and I'm so glad you're listening today because you're going to love the show. Joining me in studio, Genevieve Collins. She is the Texas Director of Americans for Prosperity and a proud seventh-generation Texan. I am only sixth generation, so I feel overshadowed here. She was a congressional candidate in Dallas, where she lives, and she was an NCAA championship rower, and along with the Olympic development team rower. Is rowing as hard as it? I hear people say it's really, really exhausting.
It is.
And it doesn't look like it should be because you're just kind of rowing back and forth.
No, it is the greatest paradox where rowing utilizes every muscle in your body, and you go from your largest muscle group, which is your legs, then to your core, then to your arms. And people always think, oh, it's just all arms. And it's like, no, it's actually all legs. And your body switches from aerobic capacity to anaerobic capacity within about 40 seconds of a race. So you're basically spending 6 to 6.5 minutes in sheer lactic acid agony. So now on the outside, it looks beautiful, coordinated, it looks beautiful. It just looks great.
So when you're rowing, you've got another team here next to you. Does the lead person speed up the timing somehow or the other? I mean, I've seen the movies where the Roman galleys, they beat the drum faster.
Yeah, you have a coxswain which is basically a tiny person with a Napoleon complex yelling at you, and this person is lovely but dead weight, and their job is to steer the boat and keep you on pace and on time and help you compete, because you're not supposed to look outside the boat. And so they're the ones that say, okay, we need to take up the strokes per minute by 4, and then the stroke seat, who's the person that sets the pace, they have to feel what speed is, and then everyone else follows them.
Oh, my. Well, you are the president of Americans for Prosperity, Texas.
Yes.
So Americans for Prosperity is nationwide. I mean, it's around. So tell us a little bit about Americans for Prosperity, then we'll talk about Texas.
Sure. Americans for Prosperity was founded about 25 years ago, and for the sole purpose of building a nationwide grassroots infrastructure. Because what we're seeing at the political level is that a lot of the conversations are happening at the top, so under the dome and in meeting rooms, but the people don't have a loud advocate, a way to organize, or to have a voice. And so Americans for Prosperity really does the simple thing of connecting people with policy across the country, and then helps them galvanize and activate their voice to create the change that they want to see in policy.
Now, how long have you been president of Americans for Prosperity, Texas?
5 years.
5 years. And there used to be, I can't remember her name, somebody else who was doing this for a while, and she and I used to work together at times years ago.
Peggy Venable.
Peggy, that's right. I couldn't remember the name.
And she's now with the governor's office. She does the governor's office of appointments. She leads the governor's office of appointments.
So you've been there 5 years. What have you learned as you've been doing this? Because how many employees do you have?
So I've got a total of 73 employees. We've got 25 full-time staff, and the rest are part-time staff. And so what have I learned through this process? It's that we have so much more as Texans and as Americans in common than we do that divides us. I know that sounds so trite, but in this world that seems so complex and that we are divided in camps and we're not allowed to talk to one another, the reality is that when you look at taxpayer issues, and those are the issues that we focus on, so property taxes, your actual taxes, health care, education, energy, immigration, criminal justice, housing. When you look at what taxpayer issues actually are, people have a lot of common ground, and you have what we call unlikely bedfellows, and our job is to help bridge those divides. And it's actually quite easy. You just have to have someone help open the door to help facilitate a conversation. And it turns out that when you put people in the driver's seat, they can get a lot done in terms of public policy creation.
Do you consider yourself a think tank? Do you consider yourself just an activist organization? Or are you a lobbying organization? What kind of organization are you?
I would say we are a do tank.
Okay.
So we do have policy. We have a massive policy team, and we write public policy. We have our own policy points of view, but we also connect real people with policy and have bottom-up solutions. So Dr. Merrill Matthews might have some really great ideas on healthcare. Well, maybe we should listen to him and have him go talk to his legislator, have him galvanize his community, and come meet at the Capitol, come speak at around the state. And we really try to give people a platform to tell their story, share their perspective, and get something done.
Texas seems to be sort of a battleground of a lot of ideas that are going on, and we initiate many of them. What are some of those battleground issues?
Well, it depends on the day.
No.
I think in this political environment we are in this week, since we're in runoff elections, that is changing. The battleground issues are ever changing in terms of whether it's social issues or tax issues. The real issue, I think, that we're going to see play out politically and in policy is really around the economy. Mm-hmm. How are we reducing inflation? Are we creating jobs? How are we looking at people's property taxes and ensuring that folks can not be paying an arm and a leg to stay in the home that they already own? How do we fund our schools, and how do we rightfully fund our health care? All of those are really economic issues, but they just happen to be kind of used as political football when convenient.
One of the things you mentioned on the website is that, and we think of Texas as a very sort of forward-leaning freedom state, and yet you say we are the 5th most regulated state, we are the 20th in regulatory reform, and we're the 7th biggest in property taxes, 7th largest property taxes. That doesn't match what I think Texas should be.
Correct. That's why we have to fight it. So we're I wouldn't say we're in great company when it comes to regulations. So we're behind California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey.
Say it ain't so.
It is. But the good news is that hope is on the way. So last session we had 274,941 regulations, not words, regulations in our regulatory code. That's crazy. For a state that really shows and says, like, we're a free market state, we want competition, we want innovation, we can't have this crazy amount of regulatory red tape. So that being said, what we did is pass the first Texas Doge, and they've already taken out 69,000 words, which is, I mean, may not be a lot to many people, but it's a lot of redundancy, and it's ensuring that Texas is starting to get back on a better path. It's
an important point because there are a lot of redundant regulations out there, and sometimes they're sort of close to each other, and you're not sure, should I follow this regulation or that regulation? We're talking with Genevieve Collins. She is president of Americans for Prosperity Texas. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Perhaps you've seen that OpenAI is now offering a chatbot known as the Shepherd, which is a Christ-like shepherd offering an empathetic ear and compassionate guidance. In case you're wondering, the guidance comes from input provided by Reddit. In the past, I've reminded you of the phrase garbage in and garbage out. It's really hard to take seriously an AI chatbot that learned about the world from Reddit. Alex McFarland has been a guest on my radio program many times. As you might imagine, he has a few things to say about this AI chatbot. He says the mind of Jesus derives from the historical record of the New Testament, not Reddit. Artificial intelligence may seem like an amazing cost saver to cash-strapped ministries, an instantly available counselor for those desperate for answers, but it can't replace a human counselor guided by the Holy Spirit. I think it should be obvious to most people that an AI counselor, even if trained by solid biblical content, would never be as effective as a private session with a counselor who can provide biblical principles and guidance face to face. At a time when so many Americans are dealing with anxiety and loneliness, what we don't need is more screen time with an AI counselor. A few months ago, I talked about how AI was influencing the church. One survey found that a majority of pastors use AI to prepare sermons. At one end of the spectrum are AI tools that help you polish something you are writing. On the other side is the reality that AI wrote the sermon. We shouldn't be surprised that AI has moved into the counseling field. It is one thing to use a search engine to see what the Bible and even prominent Christians teach about mental and spiritual issues. It's quite another to make AI your shepherd. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And you're back on Point of View with Merrill Matthews, and joining me in studio, Genevieve Collins. She is president of Americans for Prosperity Texas, and we're talking about some of the issues around Texas. And a little bit, we're going to talk about how what we're learning about in Texas, how that is being addressed in other states, some of the ways they're addressing things, and what we need to do to sort of implement some of these reforms. Genevieve, one of the things you're working on is property taxes. And Texas, we don't have a state income tax. Yay. I think we're about 7, 8 states that don't have a state income tax. We fund a lot of this with property taxes. I've heard some rumblings of people who say we need to eliminate the property tax. And I wonder, okay, so much of our funding comes from property tax. Talk about property tax reform.
So property tax reform is the idea that in order to help people keep more of their hard-earned money in their own pockets and help ensure that they're able to stay in their homes longer, we need to look at the entire system of how we're taxed locally and at the state level. So last session, for the previous two sessions, so in 2025, 2023, the Texas State Legislature has sent cumulatively $51 billion back in terms of taxpayer money back to taxpayers in the form of property tax relief. So we were supposed to feel that when we got our tax bill, our assessments. Unfortunately,
I was going to say, didn't feel that good.
I sure didn't. My property taxes went up.
Yes.
And that's the common case for most people. And so what we found is that relief is very temporary, and it's also not flowing down to taxpayers because it's being gobbled up by local governments who are continually overspending. So I'm working alongside Governor Abbott, and AFP is working on an entire property tax reform package because we want to make permanent the opportunity for people to not have to pay as much in their property taxes. So the governor's laid out a 5-point plan, one to basically cap local government spending at the same rate that the state is. So population plus inflation. They're currently held to no standard. Why can't there be parity with the state budget than there are local budgets? Number 2, appraisal reform. Why we're getting appraised every year. Every property, not just homes, these are business properties too, are being appraised on an annual basis, and the ceiling to which they can be appraised is 10%. No one starts at 5%. They always go to the ceiling, and then you have to protest your taxes. Well, the governor has proposed that instead of getting an appraisal every 1 year, you go to every 5 years, and instead of 10%, you go to 3%. The next is making sure that when people vote for bond elections, for example, or voter-approved tax rate elections, that there's a 2/3 majority. Right now, we have a simple majority rule on a vote can carry the motion. We believe that raising the threshold to make it harder to raise people's taxes in voting is the right way to do that. Fourth, there's an opportunity for people to protest their taxes as a community to roll back their rates. And lastly, the governor is proposing that the state government budget should be taking on the maintenance and operations portion of our property tax bills. So that's about half of our property tax bills usually makes up the maintenance and operations. He argues that the Texas Constitution stipulates that the state government has to pay or is responsible for paying for K-12 education. So the state should be picking up that tab, not homestead owners.
Now, you have traveled around the state some with Governor Abbott and listened to people in the local districts and so forth. What are they telling you? What are what are their complaints?
One, that they are paying way too much in property taxes. It's quite simple. Our property taxes are going up exorbitantly. And worse, people aren't feeling any relief. The state has been really purposeful on sending money back to taxpayers, but no one's really getting it unless you are a senior. And those property tax rates have been frozen for seniors legislatively. So people are really kind of, they're fearful that they can't pay their taxes. They're disappointed in the government for asking them to pay so much. And they're just exhausted because they're having to pay, $5,000 to $50,000 on property tax. And if you live on a fixed income, $5,000 is a lot of money. So it's been fun. I was voluntold by Governor Abbott that we were going on tour, and to which I said, yes, sir, I am excited. But the reality is, like, AFP, our goal is to be the taxpayer champion. And if we are not the voice of taxpayers and helping them advocate for their best interest while also meeting the needs of our state budget, then we're not doing our job. And so we're having these events all across the state where we have state lawmakers signing up on these bills, on this framework alongside the governor and I. And we're really selling this not just to lawmakers to get on board with doing this, but for them to hear from their own constituents and their communities that people are exhausted and they feel like they're being taken advantage of, even though the state doesn't propose the property taxes. All that's done at the local level. The state has to step in because local governments are abusing it. If you get your way, because it doesn't sound like you're eliminating property taxes, that's correct,
but probably lowering them.
Correct.
If you got your wish, how far would they go down? By half? Would they go down by a third? What would we be looking at?
Probably about half. The largest portion is taking the maintenance and operations portion of tax out of people's homestead bills. So that would honestly cut your bill in half. And we think that having some sort of fiscal responsibility across all of Texas with local and state government functioning in parity the same way is the right model for Washington, D.C. to follow. They haven't figured out how to spell budget, but we think that this is the right way to take care of your citizens, to fund your state, and to set up a model for everyone else to look at.
Well, Washington has, it's spelled TAXINCREASE.
Yeah, there you go.
But would the state still be able to do everything it does if it cut those property taxes in half?
It would, because our state is growing and we operate at a surplus. And so the governor's proposing, and his budget team they've done all the math, and they've proposed that we can simply pay for the maintenance and operations portion out of our surplus.
Another issue important to our listeners, education.
Yes.
And you're involved in education. What are you doing there?
So AFP has been on the front lines of passing school choice policy in the state of Texas. We believe that you should fund the student, not the system.
Finally got it done.
Finally got it done. Only took 40 years.
I was going to say, as long as I can remember, it's been an issue.
Oh, Dr. Matthews, my dad told me, he said, you're never going to get this done. He was so skeptical. My family has been involved in school choice policy since the dawn of time. And my dad was so skeptical. I said, Dad, I will get this done. Now, it was me and a whole lot of other people, but we helped, I would say, help retire some legislators who did not believe that school choice policy needed to
Abbott
happen.
did some serious elbow twisting in some of this.
Indeed, and we were very helpful on that and very persuasive in certain districts that some folks just needed to go. So, politics is a blood sport, and sometimes you have to get a little bloody to get the right thing done.
Did we pass something like you wanted, or does it meet all the things that you wanted in there?
It really does. So what we passed was 100,000 students getting the opportunity to choose the school of their choice at the tune of a little more than $10,000 per student. The average, let's say, parochial or private school across the state of Texas is about $8,000 to go to. So we are a little bit more than $10,000 per child. And one of the things I'm proudest of is that we fought to ensure that students in low-income homes and students with disabilities they were the first people in line. We wanted to make sure, if we're serious about kids not being trapped in failing public schools, then we need to ensure that those kids get the first lifeline. Rich people already have school choice. We need to make sure that we help support our low-income families well below the poverty line and at poverty line, and then also do right by students with disabilities. So I was really happy we did that. And then secondarily, we wanted to make sure that we were able to measure student progress, but not in the same way that they have to be a part of the tax test, the end of the year test. No, excuse me, the STAR test. So we believe it's a terrible way to measure student progress. There's a lot better ways, and we built that into the system.
My guest for this hour is Genevieve Collins. She is president of Americans for Prosperity Texas. You can find out more about her on our website, pointofview.net. We have information about that, how you can go to the website and find all the things that they're doing there at Americans for Prosperity Texas. Tongue-tied. Stay with us. We'll be back on Point of View.
Have you ever met a child you knew would do great things? They displayed remarkable imagination, understanding, and a zest for learning. Now imagine someone takes that child and instead of fostering their potential with a real education, they feed them nothing but lies. You know, that scenario isn't so far from reality. From a young age, Americans are fed a consistent stream of distorted facts, from the secular indoctrination they receive in many public schools, to the biases presented as fact in many colleges and universities, to the barrage of misinformation from the mainstream media and the lack of moral grounding in our society. It's not that Americans aren't capable of understanding the truth, it's that they aren't exposed to it enough. You can expose more Americans to the truth when you give to Point of View, where listeners receive facts, perspective, and biblical truth they don't get from society. As long as we have truth, we have hope. Give today at pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, Dr. Merrill Matthews.
And we're back on Point of View. Joining me in studio, Genevieve Collins. She is president of Americans for Prosperity Texas. And we're talking about some of the things that AFP has done here in Texas. In a minute, we're going to talk about what they're doing nationally. But Genevieve, you talked about getting the school choice in Texas, one of the most conservative states out there. It took us decades to get this done.
Surely.
Is there more to do there? Do we want to, you talked about 100,000 students. Do we want to try to expand that? What's happening there?
So the goal is absolutely to expand how many students have eligibility and enrollment for a Texas Education Freedom Account. That's what we're calling them. TEFA. Say that three times fast.
And can I use that to go to a Christian school? Can I use it to go to a home school, to just a little community school that a group of families have created?
Yes, it's for all types of schools. This was a big thing that I really cared about, making sure it wasn't just private schools, but it was private schools, home schools, micro schools, learning pods, online virtual schools. We wanted to give the most flexibility possible because children learn in very different environments. My sister and I grew up in the same house, and we had two very different life experiences growing up in the same house. Same thing is true for education. So now moving into the 2027 legislature, we have the data to prove through the comptroller's office. That's here in Texas, that's what we call our basically chief financial officer. 274,000 families signed up for 100,000 slots. It's the largest. Not only does Texas have the largest school choice program in the country, we also had the largest 1 month. That's all parents had to enroll their child into this program. And 250,000 families chose to enroll. So there's clearly demand for this, and we need to make sure that we fund more opportunity for school choice policy. And we're putting more money into that. So that is what we're going to be looking at doing in the next Texas legislative session.
One of the issues that's happening in Texas, but it's happening all over the country, is declining enrollment in public schools. And I listen to people talking about this, and they're not entirely sure. Some people may be going to private schools or home schools, but they're not entirely sure what's happening there.
Oh, I hear this all the time. And it's a convenient scapegoat for large school districts in Texas to say, well, school choice is taking away these vouchers. I'm using air quotes for you listeners. These vouchers are taking away our students from our public school education system. Well, the reality is that we just have declining enrollment. We don't have as many children enrolling in these schools. And we have children and families moving to different districts. So parents have the opportunity to move closer to their business, or now that so much work is online, families are moving to bigger homes out in more rural communities, which is moving away from suburban and urban centers.
You know, that's not only going to be an issue for schools, but it's also going to be an issue for entitlements like Social Security. If we have fewer people, they're not going to be paying into that system much later when you're going to be on Social Security. And
Merrill, I'm not getting Social Security.
Much later.
I turned 40 in a month, and I know for a fact I am not going to get it.
So there's other demographic changes going on there. But Dallas, I think, just recently passed the largest bond issue for education it had ever passed.
In the state history.
Yes. Yeah. Are we going into debt to do some of these things just because we don't have the money to do it?
So Dallas ISD passed a $6.2 billion bond. $5 billion of that money was allocated to building 26 new schools, updating infrastructure, HVAC. Bonds can only be done for infrastructure projects. Unfortunately, bond elections cannot go into classrooms and raise teacher pay or support education. It actually it's walls, ceilings, floors, and what's inside the walls. Unfortunately, that's tables, computers. It's all infrastructure and equipment. So Dallas passed it with flying colors. What was interesting is, a lot of the people that voted for the bond happened to live in the high income areas. And there was a lot of signage for passing the bond in those areas, whereas in the low-income areas across the city, there was no talk of the bonds. There was no voter turnout push, or it was quite minimal. So these bond elections are, in my opinion, deceiving, but they're up to the voters. And ultimately, the school district has to make the case for what they need, and they should. This is our tax money. They should make the case. In McAllen, they wanted to build a mariachi band theater for $36 million. Well, make the case,
Yep.
Like, I think that we should want our school boards to have to be transparent and make an informed plea for why they need all of this new stuff.
One of the things that we saw in the last major election is Hispanics ended up voting in larger percentages for President Trump and Republicans. And you have a segment of yours, Libre, I believe it is, that that reaches out with Hispanics. Tell us about that.
So the Libre Initiative is 15 years old. It was founded by a gentleman named Daniel Garza. Only in America could you grow up in a family of almond farmers and then grow up to be a cop. And Daniel grew up to be a cop and then a city councilman in the great state of Washington. And ultimately, he was able to work on Hispanic engagement under the Bush White House. Only in America can a story like that happen. And he decided that we needed to focus on Hispanic engagement and making sure the Hispanic community was reached out to. Conservatives have, by and large, for the last 100 years, ignored the Hispanic community, or let me rephrase, abdicated talking to them consistently, and Democrats had. And so he said, Hispanics, by and large, are conservative. We believe in the family. We believe in God. We believe in fiscal responsibility and taking care of each other. By default, we are conservative. However, no one's talking to us. So the Libre Initiative was founded to do just that, is to help communities get connected to the policies that they already believe in, but that no one's talked to them about.
Now, Americans for Prosperity, you've got chapters all over the country.
That's right.
Are other chapters doing things similar to what you're doing here in other states?
I would say we push the envelope a lot here in Texas. Like any humble Texan, we all believe that Texas has to lead the way. And so I want all my peers and fellow presidents of their chapters to try to chase what we're doing in Texas and replicate what good policy and good people and good governance looks like.
What are other successes are they having? Are they doing school choice in other states? Are they getting taxes cut in other states?
So a lot of states, yes. So a lot of states are passing school choice, like West Virginia, Iowa, Arizona. School choice, I mean, we're one of the last to go, but we did it the biggest. So I guess it doesn't matter when you catch the train, just that you're on the train. So school choice policy, there's the RAINS Act. That's been something that AFP has been really focused on. It's a regulatory efficiency act. It's kind of basically saying that the legislatures need to reclaim their power and not abdicate it to the executive branch and ensure that there's regulatory efficiency alongside that. So that's something that AFP has been leading in other states. And then, unfortunately, other states have income taxes. And so my peers have been working to reduce or completely abolish the state income tax in their states, like South Carolina or Iowa, or South Dakota.
One of the things I've noticed is that several states, I think all red states, have been lowering their state income taxes and significantly, and that's been a huge plus for people who have to pay that state income tax.
Yeah, it turns out that people want to keep more of their hard-earned money.
Go figure.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing. But ultimately, people want to attain the American dream and attain a life that they want for themselves. And if they get to keep more of their money and not have to pay into the government, that's usually a pretty good deal.
Your message is likely well accepted here in Texas among a lot of people because we're a conservative state. But I would think in some other states your group may be getting some pushback because they're coming with a free market, freedom message that some of the socialist politicians don't necessarily like.
Well, we have socialists here, unfortunately, but here in Texas. But our team operates in Washington State, which is very socialist or turning that way. Wisconsin, I mean, we're all throughout the Northeast. So we're across all 50 states. But some of us have a little easier time than others.
My guest for this hour is Genevieve Collins. She is president of Americans for Prosperity Texas. When we come back, we want to talk about some of the things that they'd like to be able to do, some new initiatives that need to be implemented at a time when you've got some states that are just really going in the wrong direction. You can find out more about Genevieve on our website, pointofview.net. I encourage you to go there, find out how to reach out to them, and I'd encourage you to do that. Might even make a donation to Americans for Prosperity. So stay with us. We'll be back for our last segment with Genevieve.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And we're back on our final segment with Genevieve Collins. And Genevieve, we've been talking about a number of the issues that you are involved in, but you're also involved in energy, and that is a big issue, not just in Texas, but across the country right now.
Absolutely. I think we're at war, and that's affecting a lot of our energy prices right now.
It is indeed.
So we would be remiss to not talk about it. Here in Texas, my point of view is that when Texas is energy dominant, America is energy abundant,
right,
and our allies are nationally secure. So that being said, how do we look at the energy makeup of our state? Texas has the most renewables within our portfolio.
And I think some people are surprised by that.
Yeah.
We have the most renewables here.
Like in order of magnitude, it's over 40% of our mix is renewables, solar and wind. I mean, it is pretty windy in the Panhandle.
It is indeed.
And it is blazing hot with nothing to do in the middle of West Texas, so we might as well use the sun. But how do we look at other technologies like nuclear, looking at small modular nuclear reactors, molten salt reactors? How do we look at other types of energy that we can bring online, not just our typical mix of oil, natural gas, solar energy, but how do we look at Bitcoin and mining? How do we look at data centers, and what are they doing?
The data centers are every state, I say every state, many states are having to deal with the data centers as so many companies are wanting to try to implement large data centers that are going to be energy hogs, as I understand it.
Yeah, I'm in the process of trying to understand the complexity around the issue because I see both sides, right? You have these massive data centers that do consume a lot of energy, and some of the older data centers, they're potentially raising rates for their local ratepayers. But now a lot of data centers are co-locating their own energy, like in their own plants on site. So, and they're not, because they're co-locating their energy on site, they're not attached to our grid. So they're not removing energy out of their grid. However, there's a lot of like water. There's this argument around like, well, what are we doing with water? Data centers use a lot of water. Well, many of the data centers have closed loop systems. So how is that really affecting our water supply? So that's what I'm trying to understand, the complexity of that issue. And we are using our grassroots communities to help us really understand how they're feeling and how are they seeing this as a local issue. Because a day without data centers at this point, it means a lot of our phones and lights don't work. So how do we balance what our communities want with the need for innovation and to ensure that we don't let China win this big battle on quantum and AI? I'm not sure what the solution looks like yet. And it's one of the things that AFP does really well is we say, hey, wait a second, we need to study this issue, but more importantly, we need to listen to what people are saying, because a lot of people are right. There's got to be a way to have mutual benefit where Texas can be the lead innovator in AI and beat China and make sure that we're nationally secure without sacrificing our communities and our precious natural resources. There is definitely a solution. Don't know what it looks like yet, but that's what we're trying to sort out.
Are there other bond issues out there?
Well, yes, there's always bond issues. Unfortunately, our local governments have put Texas citizens into $500 billion worth of debt. So you mentioned the Dallas ISD bond. So it was $6.2 billion for a bond package. Well, Dallas already has $6.5 billion in debt. So they doubled their debt overnight. And what we're seeing is that these local governments, whether they're school boards, municipality utility districts, community colleges, you name it, there's all these taxing entities. They're raising people's debt a lot. And we want to make sure that people actually know about it. The Texas Bond Review Board has a website, and it's super transparent. And we're encouraging other states to be this transparent to see it's now going to cost $94,000 in debt for my child, who's 10 months old, to go to school. That's how much debt he's going to carry on in just 1 year. And by him, it's his head that I'm paying for, and so over time. So we're just trying to make sure that when we think about bonds, people know that it's a tax increase. People actually show up to vote. That's a real issue. Bonds are in off-cycle elections. We need to make sure that they're on the same election cycle as most of our elections.
Do the bonds ever get paid off, or they just pay interest from now on?
No, they never get paid off. Have you ever heard of one?
I don't know. I've never heard of one.
We both know that you're much smarter than I am, and we both know the answer is no.
I've never heard of one being paid off.
Yeah, Dallas ISD in the $6.2 billion bond that they just passed, a portion of the bond is to go pay off old bond debt while they're still accruing new interest on the new bond. So it's a total sham. And like in town just north of Dallas, it's called Van Alstyne. They had a bond election last November. There's no election in November of an even year, of an odd year. So they passed a bond. They proposed it's a $350 million bond. Do you know how many people live in Van Alstyne?
How many?
7,231 people. I want you to guess how many people showed up to vote in a $350 million bond election.
40.
Close. 80.
Oh.
And 43 of them decided no, and 37 of them said yes. So a simple majority, 43 voted no, so the bond didn't pass.
How about that?
But can you imagine it's 1% of the whole community that showed up to vote on $350 million of debt being passed on to each of those taxpayers?
We've talked about the 250th anniversary of America here on Point of View several times. You're doing something with that regard.
Yes. Listen, what a great time to be alive. We're living in the greatest nation on the history of the planet, and we get to celebrate America's 250th birthday. What a time. So we at AFP are hosting our big celebratory event, not on July 4th, but on Friday, November 13th. Not my favorite day. However, we wanted to make sure that we were celebrating our veterans. So we wanted to do an event around Veterans Day to celebrate America's 250th birthday and make sure that people know that being an American requires participation. And so to that end, here in Dallas, and folks listening, you are welcome to join us Friday, November 13th at the National Medal of Honor Museum. We're going to have a military fitness challenge at the museum alongside the Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins. We also have Commander Major Carlos Ruiz is scheduled to come. He's the number 2 person active duty in all of the Marine Corps, and then a couple other major headliners scheduled to speak and join us all alongside a workout to honor our veterans, to realize that being an American requires participation, but service to our country, our communities, and our family are really important.
Sounds great. Now, talk a little bit about Americans for Prosperity, your website, which isn't AFP. It's a little bit different. So talk a bit about that.
So you can go find out all the information about Americans for Prosperity Texas at our website. It's super easy to remember. freedomisbigger.com. Everything's bigger in Texas, and I'm making sure that freedom is part of it. So visit us at freedomisbigger.com or on Twitter at TexasAFP.
Well, thank you, Genevieve, for joining us and telling us what AFP is doing here in Texas and some of the other things it's engaged in around the country. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Ratio Christi. This is a group that works with students and so forth on Christian apologetics, how that's set up, what they're doing, and how they're achieving their goals. So stay with us. We'll be back on Point of View.
It was not that long ago that censorship appeared to be almost inevitable. Free speech was being attacked and strangled in many places. And some of us wondered if this was the end. But now, many feel a new sense of hope, a chance for a fresh dawn. Let me caution you, now is not the time to relax. It's a time to press forward, to use this fresh opportunity to proclaim and learn how to apply truth to current issues. By the fact you're here, listening right now, that tells me that you recognize the vital role Point of View plays as a voice of truth. For more than 50 years, we've informed and equipped people who have made a real difference. And when you give to Point of View today, you breathe life into what can be a new golden era for the truth. Please, take a moment right now and invest in truth. Visit pointofview.net or give it 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net. Click in now or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Dr. Merrill Matthews.
And welcome back to Point of View. We're going to spend this hour talking about Christian apologetics and how you can learn more about it and even get involved personally. My guest by phone is Corey Miller. He grew up in Utah as a seventh-generation Mormon. He came to Christ and then later became a pastor, philosophy professor, campus minister, and now he serves as the president and CEO of Ratio Christi. That's an apologetics group. He's authored 5 books. He holds 3 master's degrees, along with a PhD from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. And joining me in studio, Robert Zeinstra. He is a follower of Jesus. He is the chapter director of Ratio Christi at the University of North Texas and the chapter director of the Denton County Christian Apologetics. So we are talking about Christian apologetics. Corey, thank you for joining me.
It is great to be here with you.
And Robert, thank you for joining me here in studio.
It's a pleasure.
So, Corey, I listened to you here a few weeks ago, and you made such a compelling presentation about what you're doing, the work of Ratio Christi. Start out by telling us, what does Ratio Christi, how did it get its start, and what does it do?
Ratio Christi was founded about 15 years ago when some students at Appalachian State University in North Carolina felt like they couldn't get answers from pastors that they were, at churches that they were attending. And they were a bit frustrated because they needed answers on the college campus. And so they made their way down to a local seminary, had a partnership there, struck up a name, and they were off to the races. But we've now been around for about 15 years. And we've got, we're in 15 different countries. We have a high school division. We have a professor's division, a PhD student-only division, and then our undergraduates on college campuses on about 100 campuses. And we are a Christ-centered organization. It's not just God-centered, but Ratio Christi means the reason of Christ. And we want to equip students and professors to give historical, philosophical, and scientific reasons for following Jesus.
What are the core beliefs of the organization?
I mean, core beliefs, we are pretty eclectic. We've got the frozen chosen Presbyterians, the behavioral Baptists, the crazy charismatics. I mean, but we are Orthodox, evangelical, Christian in our orientation. But we make the main things. When it comes to campus ministry, we're sort of a mere Christianity organization. We partner well with others because we've got big fish to fry on the university campuses, you might say.
So Christian denominations, people, if I'm a Presbyterian, if I'm a Baptist, if I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, are we able to join into the chapters of Ratio Christi?
Oh, yeah. As Augustine once was alleged to have said, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, in all things, charity. So if you're on with the essentials, then we welcome you into our fold. People can go to our website and look at our specific statement of faith, but we are a Orthodox evangelical Christian organization, and by Orthodox, I don't mean Eastern Orthodox, even though there are some of those people that play in our sandbox as well.
Now, you establish chapters in colleges and I think high schools, universities. Tell us about that. Yeah,
these are like ordinary campus ministries that meet weekly for their specific events that they do, but they're different than the rest of the campus ministries. I like to tell people that what separates us from every other apologetics ministry, in the country, is that we're on the campus, the most influential institution shaping civilization. And what separates us from every other campus ministry is that we do apologetics evangelism. That is, we engage in thoughtful Christianity. We try to address the tough questions, whether that's transgenderism or why does God allow evil and suffering, or whether the Bible is historically reliable and how does it match up with science. So we address questions that sometimes become obstacles for people resisting Christ, and we believe that we have the truth, and so really we want it to come down to whether that person is ready to follow Christ or not. There is no intellectual barrier truly to someone following Christ, because our worldview, I tell people, is intellectually superior to all competing worldviews.
Do you do this by setting up debates? Do the various chapters have a debate on something, or is this done in the classroom, or is it just done in the meeting? How do you proceed on that?
Yeah, Robert can speak into that specifically on the classroom, since on his specific campus. Our campuses are all different, and we give a lot of freedom to the chapter directors based on the needs of that campus and the strengths of that particular chapter. But we tell people, like Epictetus, the Greek or Stoic philosopher, who said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so that we listen more. If someone needs a hug, we give them a hug. If they need an argument, we are the ministry that gives them an argument. So instead of doing Bible study, prayer groups, Thursday night barn dances like some other campus ministries do, our weekly meetings are focused on these hot topics. Maybe it's 1 month on Islam. Maybe it's a month focused on postmodernism, or maybe the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. It depends on what the needs are of that chapter, the student constituents. And then, of course, we do, annual big events where we've done everything from large-scale debates with several thousand people showing up live to conferences on human sex trafficking, where we'll bring in an ex-porn star or an ex-sex slave and have them tell their stories. And what better, soil to have the gospel in than something talking about being enslaved and then being freed from that slavery, which we're all, in a sense, slaves to sin until we're set free by Jesus. So we do these big events, and they are catalytic events to drive more people out to hear what we have to say. And then eventually we get around to presenting the gospel of Christ.
My guest for this hour is Corey Miller. He is the president and CEO of Ratio Christi. Also joining me in studio is Robert Zeinstra, who runs the one at University of North Texas. When we come back from the break, we want to turn to you, Robert, and talk a bit about how a chapter is set up, how that chapter works, how people can find out more about chapters and maybe consider either joining a chapter or maybe creating their own chapter. Corey, just quickly, how many chapters do you have out there?
Again, if we're talking about standard undergraduates, that's about 100 different campuses. We've got about 25 that are college prep that work in tandem with high schools, with churches and so forth. And we prepare students to not just survive, but to thrive in the universities. And then we've got about a dozen or more that are PhD student or professors. And then again, about 15 different countries represented.
My goodness, it's quite an organization for not having been around that long. My guest for this hour, Corey Miller. He's the president and CEO of Ratio Christi, and also joining me in studio, Robert Zeinstra. We're going to take a break here, a mandatory break, and then when we come back, we want to find out a little bit about how that chapter works at the local level. So stay with us. We'll be back on Point of View.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Perhaps you've seen that OpenAI is now offering a chatbot known as the Shepherd, which is a Christ-like shepherd offering an empathetic ear and compassionate guidance. In case you're wondering, the guidance comes from input provided by Reddit. In the past, I've reminded you of the phrase garbage in and garbage out. It's really hard to take seriously an AI chatbot that learned about the world from Reddit. Alex McFarland has been a guest on my radio program many times. As you might imagine, he has a few things to say about this AI chatbot. He says the mind of Jesus derives from the historical record of the New Testament, not Reddit. Artificial intelligence may seem like an amazing cost saver to cash-strapped ministries, an instantly available counselor for those desperate for answers, but it can't replace a human counselor guided by the Holy Spirit. I think it should be obvious to most people that an AI counselor, even if trained by solid biblical content, would never be as effective as a private session with a counselor who can provide biblical principles and guidance face-to-face. At a time when so many Americans are dealing with anxiety and loneliness, what we don't need is more screen time with an AI counselor. A few months ago, I talked about how AI was influencing the church. One survey found that a majority of pastors use AI to prepare sermons. At one end of the spectrum are AI tools that help you polish something you are writing. On the other side is the reality that AI wrote the sermon. We shouldn't be surprised that AI has moved into the counseling field. It is one thing to use a search engine to see what the Bible and even prominent Christians teach about mental and spiritual issues. It's quite another to make AI your shepherd. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews, sitting in for Kirby today. And we're talking about Ratio Christi. This is a Christian apologetics group. And joining me by phone, Corey Miller. He's the president of Ratio Christi. And joining me in studio, Robert Zeinstra, who is the director of the University of North Texas chapter. So, Robert, tell us a little bit about how does a chapter get started? What does a chapter do? If I'm interested in that, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of beginning with the end in mind. we have 4 different expectations of a director. The first is we're going to teach apologetics. The next is we're going to build community. The next is we're going to do evangelism, because apologetics is just a pathway to sharing the gospel. And finally, we want to develop leadership within some of our student leaders. So with those 4 things in mind, to start a chapter, you first need an advisor. So you have to have a professor who's going to be your advisor. And this is pretty much standard for any university. At UNT, I found a advisor, and then from there you need officers. So you got to find a way to talk to students, get them interested. And in my case, it was working with Baptist Student Ministries. I was able to talk to some of their students. We had a few interested. I had 3 officers and an advisor, and now we could become an official student organization.
You're ready to go then. So do you meet with at the Baptist Student Union? Do you meet just someplace off campus? How does that work?
Yeah, we happen to meet at the CCC. It's Christian Campus Community. This is a non-denominational ministry. They have a building right next to campus. It's actually a former fraternity house. And it is a great place for us to meet every Monday night at 6:30. And as Corey said, we have a specific topic. We have done undergraduate debates, and all those topics, are in the scientific, historical, philosophical, or cultural space. And we meet, and then we table 3 times a week in the university union. What does that mean? We have a table set up with a whiteboard, and we're talking to students as they go by. We're promoting Ratio Christi, but more than anything, we're trying to get some spiritual conversation going to see if we can actually do some apologetics evangelism right there in the student union.
Do you get people who've just they've heard about it and they want to come in and just sit in, see what happens?
Yeah, our target on any university is the Christian who identifies weakly and they have doubts and challenges, because the university environment is going to give them more and more doubts and challenges. It's going to add fuel to the fire. So we want to get to them before they've fallen off the wagon, so to speak. That's our target. But we talk to everybody and anybody. In our meetings, we've had folks who identify as Norse pagans, witches. We've had, of course, a lot of atheists. We have Muslims, Hindus, in particular. So everyone's welcome, but our target is that young Christian who really hasn't learned that Christianity's true, not just a blind faith.
Corey, that's a real problem. Colleges and universities are a challenge for people who've grown up in the church and they've been to Sunday school and they come feeling like, well, I'm a Christian, but then they hit these areas where they start getting professors, they get challenged on a number of things, they don't think they have an answer, and you get some falling away at that time, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And because I actually travel the country, so I see many of the different chapters. They all have different flavors, again, according to the chapter director and the audience on that particular university. So we have one chapter, for example, that had more trans students attending it than non-trans students. Yeah, I've got one person emailed us this month telling us a story that he was the director of the Atheist Club on that campus, and he wanted to pass a note on to the former Ratio Christi chapter director, whom he used to have regular conversations with about God and morality. And he said, this was 10 years ago, and since then I've become a Christian, and I just think back about all of our conversations that, planted seeds. So that person came to Christ, closed the Atheist Club down, happened to also at UCLA, the atheist director there closed the chapter down because in conversation with our people, he got saved and started meeting with our group. No need to have the atheist club open again. And I can tell tons of stories like that across the country. So, yeah, we try to equip the believers to give reasons for following Jesus. But we are the ministry on campus to address the non-believers' hot topic questions.
And I don't want to be too critical of churches, but an awful lot of people come from Christian background, and they just have not been given the intellectual background, the answers that they need to be able to address some of these challenges.
Well, I do want to be critical of churches, not every church, but I will say when people ask me, what's the solution to all this? Like if you read my book, The Progressive Miseducation of America, if you make it through the first 2/3 of it without, wanting to go pull your hair out and just wonder, is there any hope for us? I say, yeah, there is, but it needs to start by repenting. When Jesus was challenged by the Pharisees and Sadducees, what's the greatest command? He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And for the last century, evangelical Christianity in America has been marked by the menace of mindless Christianity. And there are a lot of good pastors out there, a lot of good pastors in churches. But there are a lot that are horrible because they are being more influenced by culture and sociology than by scripture and theology. They're so enamored with the latest fads like skinny jeans and fog machines that they forget about Christian thought and equipping people for works of ministry, which is what Paul says that, pastors are supposed to do. And so, if you want to follow Jesus, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commands. If you want to follow him, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the recent data coming out of, like the Barna research projects and Arizona Christian University shows that, the number of people that hold a biblical worldview in the United States is down to about 4%. With pastors, it's 37%. Evangelical pastors, I guess we're supposed to be excited, it's between 51 and 57%. So, yeah, I do want to be critical of pastors. They're the shepherds. Not all of them are terrible like this. A lot of them are great. But far too many are derelict of duty. They are not guarding the sheep, and they're not equipping us for works of ministry, especially when you're going to go off to the university campus. If I told you what the statistics are there, it would be mind-blowing.
Robert, what are some of the biggest challenges you see from the students coming in? I mean, we have students guys, some girls who spend their whole day on doing video games and so forth, and yet they come in. What is the challenge that you see in trying to get them focused on the issues and the answers?
Yeah. The biggest challenge right now is God good? Is Christianity good? Because the culture right now wants to beat down that college student, and high school as well, with the idea that Christianity is bad for the world, it's bad for culture, it's bad for the United States, right? So generally we have to overcome that right up front. And then it's just, is Christianity true? Well, religion isn't a true false sort of thing. That's the wrong category, they'd say. This is, you either believe it or you don't. And so therefore a Hindu or a Muslim or a Mormon is just as right as you are in claiming truth. So all of those things are kind of at the forefront. But then evolution. I mean, when 90-some% of professors are teaching evolution, i.e. that the universe created itself somehow, and that life comes from non-life somehow, we'll figure it out someday in the future, and then that deletes the need for a creator God, and then it puts all of God's word into jeopardy at that point. So that's a really big topic that we touch on a lot in our meetings: evolution, science versus religion. That's the mythology that's out there as well.
We're going to have to take a break here, but when we come back, let's all talk about the issue of truth, because you've got so many people today who just simply do not believe there is a truth. You can have your truth and I can have my truth, but there is no truth. And that just strikes me as one of the big challenges we've got to be able to overcome. My guest, we're talking with the president and CEO of Ratio Christi, and along with Robert Zeinstra, who is a chapter president or chapter director, and some of the issues that students find as they try to go and navigate the world, both in just high school and college, and some of the challenges that they find from people who are going to raise questions about Christianity. And if they haven't seen those questions before, if they haven't addressed them, in many cases, they don't have a good answer for it. So stay with us. We'll be back on Point of View.
can you trust? Years ago, many of us could probably have provided a fairly long list, but today it seems we almost can't trust anyone. Educators don't even know what a woman is anymore. Many so-called public servants have shown all they care about is themselves. The FBI has been accused of bias, law-breaking, betrayal, and journalism. It's largely corrupt, with no Clark Kent standing up for truth, justice, and the American way. All of this is why Point of View Radio is more important than ever, and your part in supporting us is more needed than ever. Do your part today in supporting trustworthy truth. Stand with us and help push back the lies and the darkness. Visit pointofview.net. Don't put it off. Take a moment right now and click on that big blue button that says Donate Now, or call to invest at 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, Dr. Merrill Matthews.
And welcome back to Point of View. Merrill Matthews sitting in for Kirby Anderson today. And we've got on the phone Corey Miller. He is Dr. Corey Miller. He is president of Ratio Christi. And then joining me in studio, Robert Zeinstra. He is a director of the University of North Texas chapter of Ratio Christi. And Robert, y'all have a lot of material that you have available for people, because an awful lot of people come and they just don't know where to go or what to look at. And you've got some material there.
Yeah, we do. The last couple years, and Corey can speak more broadly where this started and where it's going. The Ratio Christi team has put together a number of resources for us. You could call it our curricula in a way. And what I rely on, there's 47, almost 50 of these Novum series booklets. This one's on written by Dr. Stephen C. Meyer of Discovery Institute, Contemporary Scientific Evidence. This one says, does God hide from us? Right? That's often a claim against God. Prophecy and fulfillment, building a path to truth. You were just talking about that. So we use these really effectively in our learning environments and giving them away to students who have these concerns. We're also using these in the summer and winter break time period, where a student can read a booklet in a 2-week time span, and then we can get a dozen of them together to talk about what they read, maybe questions they have, and so on. We use these with parents in the church as well as high schoolers. And maybe Corey can talk a little bit about where we're going with this and how this got started.
Corey?
Sure. And in addition to those nearly 50 booklets, there are other mini booklets as well. So we've got great discipleship material, everything on classical apologetics, on science, on scripture, on suffering, and on current cultural apologetics that include things like race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity, and so forth. Those are also available now through Logos Bible software, as well as through our website. And then we just started a journal on theology, philosophy, and culture as well. So Ratio Christi is the premier thinking man's campus ministry. That's not to say that the others are not thoughtful on campus, but this is our forte. We're sort of like a special ops ministry, not general infantry, so to speak, when we have boots on the ground. We are specially trained to be able to dismantle worldviews that are subversive to Christian thought, and there are a lot of them, especially on the campus.
You know, it's such a challenge. I remember when I became a Christian in college, the first thing I wanted to do was to go out and find good material. And I found some, but it was hard to find good material and to know which is going to be good, dependable material to read.
Right. Yeah, and I think we try to make that available on our website for those booklets, for example, that Robert was referring to. They're free for download if anyone wants to just go put their email address in there, and you can have access to all of them, and they're accessible. Not only are they written by scholars, but we require them to be written at the 11th grade reading level. That's the equivalent of the New American Standard Version of the Bible. So they're accessible. They're 25 pages. They're digital or printable. Again, free for download on PDF if you just sign up for the email. So the resources are there. They're available to people. And people are busy. Pastors are busy. Parents are busy. But you've got to be able to equip your people, equip your kids, train them in the way they should go. And when they get older, they won't get conscripted to work for the other side, which is actually what's happening on the college campus.
Corey, mention some of the books that you have written, because you've written several.
Yeah, so I have 3 books on Mormonism. One with former Mormon scholars called "Leaving Mormonism: Why 4 Scholars Changed Their Minds." I have another one that is written by almost all former Mormon missionaries responding to the Mormon missionary message, dismantling the Mormon missionary discussions that they have in your home so that people know exactly what they're going to cover in all their discussions in your home and how to respond as a Christian. And then I've got another one, "Engaging with Mormons, Understanding Their World, Sharing Good News." And I'm looking at their psychology, sociology, and their theology. That's on Mormonism because I have a 7-generation background. My ancestor was a former bodyguard of Joseph Smith. But the ones on, I've got other ones on philosophy. Is faith in God reasonable? Debates in Philosophy, Science, and Rhetoric. In Search of the Good Life, Through the Eyes of Aristotle, Moses Maimonides, and Aquinas. These are, those are for philosophers, people that are interested in that kind of stuff. But the most recent one, and I think it's the most important book that I've ever written because of the cultural moment, is The Progressive Miseducation of America, Confronting the Cultural Revolution from the Classroom to Your Community. People are wondering, what just happened to my country? America is gone as we knew it. It's no longer Grandma's America. And I tell them how that happened and how we can respond to it.
And you have concerns just about the ability to be able to reach out to people on campus, haven't you? I mean, the free speech issue and being able to share your message has been under attack as time has passed, hasn't it?
Since I was an undergrad, I had to appeal to legal authority. When I was a professor of philosophy and ethics at Indiana University, I had to reach out to Alliance Defending Freedom to help. When I became president 11 years ago, and since then, we've had about 160 legal inquiries, 4 federal victories, 5 appellate court victories, 2 SCOTUS assist, and a recent victory in the Department of Education. And so we're constantly dealing with legal issues on the campuses. We started as Christians, these universities, and now they don't even want to, on the campus, giving our ideas. They want our money, our tuition dollars, and they want our kids.
Corey, this strikes me as so strange, and Kirby and I have talked about this at times in the past. When I was in college, when I was an undergraduate, if I heard a lecture was going to come up, if I didn't agree with it or something, I'd go and listen to what the person had to say to see what their message was, and then I could try to deal with it one way or the other. And a lot of that has changed recently.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Princeton lecturing a couple of months ago, and preceding me was another professor there from the University of Washington, he's a queer, trans, feminist river scientist, whatever that is, right? And that's what his discussion was on: queer and trans focus on love and grief for rivers and fish. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you're finding at these universities, and the dominance, the moderate, the middle ground is gone from the campuses. They're getting rid of the middle, and the conservatives are so few in number. Those who stick their head up above the foxhole get it shot off to make an example of them so that the other ones stay in the foxhole. This is a real fight on the campuses. But the ratio of liberal to conservative professor, and by liberal, I really mean illiberal, kind of Marxist leaning, is 23-1 for those who recently got tenure and about 27-1 at the Ivy League schools. So if parents and pastors are listening to this and they're not preparing their flock and their family to face this stuff, then it's like shooting fish in a barrel, and parents and grandparents are literally paying for the apostasy of their own children. We need to equip our people for this.
Robert, that seems to be the biggest challenge, is equipping people and getting them ready to face this. How do you do this at the local chapter?
Yeah. Well, at the local chapter, we recruit people to come to our Monday night meetings, and we've averaged 30 in this last semester. So we'll have topics like the classical arguments for the existence of God, from the cosmological argument or the design argument or the moral argument. Try to create a good foundation. In the second semester, we usually have a potpourri of topics. It's more, what do the students want to talk about? So we'll talk about art as an evidence for the existence of God, or music. We'll talk about women's roles, for example, or archaeological findings that help support the efficacy and the truthfulness of biblical claims. So we hit those topics, and then we find leaders from within the folks that generally attend more than once or twice or three times. We pull them into a core team, and now we want to develop them and create leaders from them. And some of them become our officers. Some of them go to our table in the student union and rehearse and practice their apologetic skills, because, you know, we all think about 1 Peter 3:15, right? Always be ready. But 1 Peter 3:16 is to do it with reverence and respect. That's the key, because we can have this knowledge and we just want to deliver that knowledge to somebody, but we have to do it in the right way.
We'll be back in just a minute.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And we're back with our final segment, talking about Ratio Christi and apologetics, Christian apologetics, and being able to provide, especially students, answers with questions that they have. Robert, you are the director of a university chapter. If I want to start a chapter, if I'd like to get involved in that, how do I do that?
Yeah, and Dr. Merrill, if you wanted to talk to me, then I would direct you, right? But if you don't know another director around the country, just go to Ratio Christi, RATIOCHRISTI.org. And then you're going to see a link there that says get involved or join. Now that email is going to go to our national headquarters, and then you're going to get a follow-up. And in that case, they'll probably put you in touch with a local director so you could hear about how it works, what's required. Hey, come and attend some of our meetings at UNT, and you'll get a feel and a flavor for it. So that's the best way to kind of get started. And then, of course, each university or college has a different requirement for getting a student organization set up. You need to do a little bit of research on that. But it's salesmanship, really, selling yourself into the university and then getting students to join.
What about high schools?
Yeah, high schools. The longer you spend in the university and college environment, the more you yearn to get upstream into cleaner waters into the high school environment. In fact, we just started a chapter here. We're calling it Denton County Christian Apologetics. It's focused on high school. We want to serve all high schoolers and churches in Denton County. So that's just another facet within Ratio Christi to apply and to become a chapter director for high school. That takes a little bit different flavor. You can't just go on campus like you can with university. So you may have to set it up through a church or through kind of a neutral site, but it's really needed and necessary.
Corey, have you had some success in high schools?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've been on secular campuses, we've been on Christian campuses, and we operate from within churches for that as well. The national director of the RC College Prep, RCCP as we call it, is there in Texas as well. And he's actually got a middle school group and a high school group. And what he does with his high school group is he takes them over to the local university and allows them to test their mettle that he's trained them on for a while to get used to what it's going to be like when they go off to the university. And then they come home sometimes with their tail between their legs, and now they really want to listen and pay attention and learn this stuff because they realize what they're up against when they go off to the university. It's different. You've got Friday Night Frat Row. Yeah, what's that?
I was going to say, do you have a course that if I want to become essentially qualified in some sense, do you have a course that I can read, I go through, some way that I get approved by you as a person who is able to do this?
No, a lot of people come to us from a lot of different angles. Some come from within our chapters, increasingly more. They forego their career, say, in engineering or biology or whatever their degree was in, and they come on board with us and they raise full support, and this is a career pathway for them because this has got eternal results, and if you're at the university, that's the greatest leverage point in culture right now, impacting the university, because that's where our doctors and lawyers and political leaders and so forth are at, and K through 12 educators. Some people, though, come from seminaries. Some pastors join us. Some professors join us as well. So we have content within, but we often partner with other organizations if they want, quick worldview training in 10 months. We partner with the Colson Fellows if they want to know how to, speak publicly. We partner with Cross-Examined. If they want to get seminary training in history, biblical studies, philosophy, science, we partner with a lot of the nation's seminaries to get great discounts, 25, 50, and in some cases even 100% off. So if people want to go to higher education, we have ways of helping them earn masters and PhDs at discounted rates as well.
So what's your biggest challenge that you have at the local level?
Yeah, at the local level, and just to add on to the last question, we've got a lot of young people who want to get involved, and I mean 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, and they especially want to get involved at the high school level, or if they're in college, then that's a great match too. And I have a couple different options of putting them through some formalized training, both locally here that I might do, or some of the churches might do worldview training. And then they get from that a level of confidence, resources, and then it's also good for the resume to say, hey, I went through this certification program.
So it is a certification kind of program.
Yes, yeah. There's about a dozen out there that we can go to, and I have some of my favorites, but again, it depends on where someone's at and how much money they want to spend or what our discount is or isn't. But the key is to get them confident, because just like a salesperson, if you're not confident in your product, you're not going to do a good job selling it. You're going to talk too much and not listen enough. So that's how we like to get people started here locally, and I'm focused on the young people right now.
Just to take the negative side on this, if somebody comes up and you say, I'm just not sure this person is qualified. He wants to start a chapter. I'm just not sure he or she is there yet. Can you push back? Can you say no? We're going to go with somebody else. What happens if you're not confident from somebody?
Yeah, I think what we do is we try to get that person into an internship or an assistant chapter director role. And so I'm fortunate. I have two assistant chapter directors, one on the high school side, one on the college and UNT side, and they're learning. They're given responsibilities that are helping them grow and develop along the way. And then that may, provide them the opportunity to assume a chapter director role. We also have a chapter director, Rebecca Lowe at TWU, and then another one at Tarrant County Community College. So we have a lot of places that can kind of do mentoring and mentorship for people that aren't quite ready and just want to see, and then we can help them get there.
Corey, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Tell people how they can get in touch with you, with the organization, and what's next on your agenda. Where do you want to go in the next few years?
If they want to get in touch with me, you can go to drcorymiller.com. That's my speaking website. You can look at my schedule, bring me to your campus, to your church, your conference, or your men's ministry. And I speak on a plethora of topics, but that's a way to get in touch with me. Of course, you can always go through the RatioChristi.org website, and that's where you're going to see various chapters across the country to plug into. That's where you'll find our press, RC Press, with our product line. And if you want to, think about graduate school, we help fund bright Christian PhD students going off to top 100 universities and launching chapters there as well. So if people are looking to get involved at the high school level, the undergrad, the grad, or the professor level, we do all of that, and we tag with churches as well. Where we're going into the future, we're on 100 college campuses. We want to make sure we're on all 6 continents. We want to be able to reclaim the universities for Christ. It's been done before. I write about that in my book. It's been done before, in other words, a radical changing of the guard. We started the universities. An ideological revolution came through. We got ousted. We had to go start, Calvin and Biola and Wheaton and other universities like that. And now the second ideological revolution is moving through the universities, overturning the first one and infiltrating into our culture. And that shows that it's been done multiple times before. It can be done again. And we want to do that.
Corey Miller, thank you for joining me. Rob Zeinstra, thank you for joining me. And thank you for joining us on Point of View. We'll be back tomorrow with Weekend Edition here.
In 19th century London, 2 towering historical figures did battle, not with guns and bombs, but words and ideas. London was home to Karl Marx, the father of communism, and legendary Baptist preacher Charles Spurgeon. London was in many ways the center of the world, economically, militarily, and intellectually. Marx sought to destroy religion, the family, and everything the Bible supports. Spurgeon stood against him, warning of socialism's dangers. Spurgeon understood Christianity is not just religious truth, it is truth for all of life. Where do you find men with that kind of wisdom to stand against darkness today? Get the light you need on today's most pressing issues delivered to your inbox when you sign up for the Viewpoints commentary at pointofview.net/signup. Every weekday, in less than 2 minutes, you'll learn how to be a person of light to stand against darkness in our time. It's free, so visit pointofview.net/signup right now. pointofview.net/signup. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.